កម្មវិធីកិច្ចសន្ទនាកម្ពុជានិងពិភពលោក
Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue of Southeast Asia TV. Tonight I have a great surprise. I have a personality, a global personality who happened to be in town for 2 days, and I thought he coming with a great mission, and I thought it would be great to have him come in spontaneously to the program. And hopefully he can tell us what his mission is all about. But I can assure you it's something quite exciting, not just for Cambodia, but for the world. On that note, Salami, welcome to Cambodia once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to be back here,
Yes.
and especially with you.
Yes. Well, I mean, what great thing bring you to Cambodia this trip?
What brings me to Cambodia this time is my government position in France for driving the Paris French Universal Expo bid for 2025.
Yes.
Universal exhibitions take place once every 5 years. We had Shanghai in 2010, we had Milano in 2015, we have Dubai in 2020, and Paris is pitching.
Yes.
For 2025.
Yes. But before...
That's my mission.
Oh, that's great. But just so that the audience know a bit about yourself, perhaps you can say a bit about your humble background.
Yeah, I mean, this job is one more of my incarnations. The previous one was when I served as DG of the World Trade Organization during 8 years, leaving in 2013. And that's when both of us had a lot of interactions, and this is also when I had the pleasure of helping Cambodia to join the World Trade Organization. That was in the previous life when I was European Trade Commissioner.
So your story with Cambodia go way back, and I must say for the audience, for the record, that Salami has been tremendously instrumental in helping Cambodia, wearing both hats, as a former EU Trade Commissioner and as well Director General WTO, to help Cambodia join WTO. And Salami, you can see after so many years not being Cambodia, you see the effect of trade liberalization. I don't have to say that, you can see in your own eye. But back to the World Expo. Why France is submitting its candidature?
Well, we do that first because we haven't had a Universal Expo since 1900.
Huh.
At the time of the beginning of the Expos in the 19th century, we were always competing with London.
Yes.
From the 1850s on. And we had, of course, a very successful exhibition in 1989 for the centenary of the French Revolution.
Yes.
This is when the Eiffel Tower
Yes.
was built. And
Yes.
everybody knows the Eiffel Tower.
Yes.
For instance, so the French authorities, the previous government and the new president thought that it would be a good way to link back to the past.
Yes.
Because we have knowledge, experience, but also look for the future. And we've chosen a theme, which is each candidate
Yes.
chooses a theme for the Expo.
Yes.
And the choice of the theme is part of the competition.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the one we've chosen is Knowledge to Share, Planet to Care. And we've decided to have a theme in 2025 which connects science, technology, progress, knowledge, which is what exhibitions usually celebrate,
Yes.
but also the environmental concerns. And we asked 1,000 of millennials
Uh-huh.
3 years ago, Universal Expo 2025, what do you want to discuss?
Okay.
And the result of these polling
Yes.
was we want to discuss our hopes and our fears.
Yes.
our hope
Yes.
is in science,
Yes.
knowledge,
Yes.
education.
Yes.
Our fear is with the planet. And so we decided that a good theme for 2025 would be how can we use science, technology in order to address the environmental degradations problem we have, whether climate, whether biodiversity, whether oceans. And that's why we've chosen this theme. On top of that, 2025 is 10 years after the Paris
Yes.
2015
Yes.
COP climate agreement, and 5
Quite
years,
timely.
and
Easy to remember.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's also 5 years before the deadline of the 2030
Yes. Yes.
Sustainable Development
Yes.
Goals.
The
So
UN
the notion
agenda.
that France would organize in 2025 a sort of taking stock of where we are and
Yes.
how to move this forward for 2030 is something which convinced the President of the Republic.
Quite
And as you know,
yeah.
we have a new President of the Republic who happened to be one of the promoters of the Expo when he was a Minister of the Economy. So, and there's a lot of enthusiasm in France for that.
Yes.
And with this idea that, we should link the past
Yes.
and the future.
Yes. Now. We have to do it now.
That's our concept,
Yes.
which is why we've chosen a place
Yes.
at the south of Paris,
Yes.
which is Paris-Saclay, which is a
How
big
far is it?
scientific.
How far is it
It's-
from-
It's 40 minutes from
Okay,
Paris
so it's-
with collective transportation. So it allows
Yes.
to have the exhibition, plus, of course, Paris and the French touristic resources available. And we've chosen a place which is a big scientific cluster, which we are building.
Yes.
There's already 60,000 students down
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And one of our ideas
Yes.
is to have modular pavilions,
Okay.
something which is reasonably cheap,
Yes.
much cheaper than
Eco-friendly, I hope.
absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
And the notion is that these pavilions, if participant countries so wish, could be turned in a residence for students later on. So a sort of big university residence
Yes.
where students coming from all over the world
Yes.
would have their own place, a bit like the Cité Universitaire,
Yes, yes.
which existed
Yes.
already
Yes.
in Paris. So we are looking at something which is dynamic,
Yes.
but also useful
Yes.
and environmentally friendly,
Yes.
which of course is a big must now.
Salami, I'm going to go straight to the point. You're competing against who?
We are
France competing against who?
We are competing against Osaka, Japan,
Yes.
against Ekaterinburg, Russia,
Yes.
and against Baku, Azerbaijan. So, serious competitors.
But
we believe
what?
we've,
Yeah.
We believe we've built something which is different,
Yes.
and of course, it's Paris and France.
Yes.
We remain the largest tourist destination in the world, which is a big attractiveness advantage we have. And we think we will have roughly 40 million visitors during 6 months, from May to October 2025, which is, of course, a very high number, which leverages the normal attractiveness of Paris.
Yes.
And as you may know, we already have the Olympic Games
Yes. Yes.
for 2024.
Yes.
And having the Olympic Games for 2024 is also a way to warm our
Yes.
tires for the Expo.
Exactly.
So what we do in terms of transport, in terms of logistics, in terms of hosting, in terms of young people hosting foreigners, they do it in 24 and 25, and it's a good sequence.
Yeah, so I think sequence-wise it's good, but you also have the timing, which is great. You have I can see already the outcome, the post-event outcome. Even you mentioned the UN Agenda 2030. The COP 10 year afterward, the Olympic. I think Paris on the radar.
Yeah,
Paris on the radar.
That's what we, and and that was true a few years ago. I mean, France had a sort of problem with globalization.
Yes.
I mean, the French were not always very happy with globalization.
Yes.
And it's also a way to try and reconcile the French with
Yes.
the world.
Yes.
You don't invite people you don't like.
Yes.
So they have to have a better vision
Yes.
of how formidably beautiful this can be,
Yes.
we know that there are risks, and notably in this connection with the environment. And we would wish this Universal Expo to be an occasion
Yes.
for doing more in order to save our planet.
Yes.
A sort of element of catalyzation of energy. For instance, if we get it,
Yes.
take the example of Cambodia.
Yes.
What we would do if we get it in 2018 is build one or two specific projects
Yes.
in whatever water management
Yes. Yes. Okay.
or in sustainable agriculture, which France would start with Cambodia
Yes.
at the end of next year, and we have 7 years to build something that then will be displayed,
Yes.
presented as the Cambodian idea.
So what you're trying to say is that there's a lot of it's very inclusive in that sense. Very
Absolutely. It's a competition
yes.
to try and find new ways of being better at
Yes, yes.
coping with our environmental problems. And again, whether it's climate change, whether it's air pollution, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's ocean degradation, whether it's forest plantation. You know, when Cambodia is a country who
Yes.
has quite a lot of experience in
Yes.
this.
Yes.
So each country would come with something more we do, and if we do it together, we
Yeah.
may impact
Yes.
seriously the way these environmental problems are coped with.
Chers amis, we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue this exciting discussion. Chers amis, I like the idea that you mentioned concretely an example. You're in Cambodia. How do you get the country? Because it's not just a expo for France.
No.
It's an expo for the world.
Absolutely.
And getting the country to be part of that process, I think it's a great idea. It's generally is like that. This sort of World Expo in the past.
Not really. I mean, there's always a theme.
Yes.
But I mean, it's traditionally it's more showing what your country is about.
Uh-huh.
It's a sort of tourist
Yes.
display.
Yes.
This time,
Yes.
of course, we want countries to show what they have to
Yes.
show in terms
Yes.
of art, in terms of culture,
Yes.
music, food. That's the tradition. But we want to do something which is useful for everybody.
Yes.
Now, take the example of Cambodia.
Yeah.
If France wins, I'll be back here beginning of next year
Yes.
with Cambodian authorities, and we will look at varieties of projects
Yes.
which Cambodia has in mind. We will try and select in this
Yes.
those who are the most representatives of how can knowledge, culture address environmental problems.
Yes.
We will select the ones you will choose. You, Cambodia, will choose what is the or the few projects, and then France will help you getting there in mobilizing, for instance, development money, in mobilizing international organizations
Yes.
like the UN, like the International Trade Center, which you happen to know quite
Yes, yes.
well in Geneva, like the UNEP, United Nations
Yes.
Environmental Programme, and the European and the French push behind this.
Yes.
So it's a project-driven
Yes. Okay.
event.
Yes.
And again, if 160 countries come with 160 ways of improving through their own knowledge, their own culture, how can we cope with that? I think we will do something which is useful for humanity.
Yes.
After all, a Universal Expo is something that has to be it has to be something nice.
Yes.
It has to be entertaining.
Yes.
There has to be a sort of fair. There has to be music. There has to be good food. If on top of that there is something that brings us nearer
Yes.
to what we all try to do with the SDGs, I think France will have helped things happening.
Well, it's intellectually stimulant, but the bottom line costs. How expensive can this sort of event I mean, you're talking about massive. You're talking about accommodating 40 million people in 6 months. That's a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah, you're
how-
right. So one of the originalities of the French bid is that the Expo will be run by the private sector.
Ah, okay.
So
I'm glad to hear the role of private sector.
It's a 3.5 billion business plan.
Yes,
They will bid.
yes,
They will get the money of entries,
yes,
but they will run the system.
Yes.
So they will run the construction. They will run the exploitation of the Expo during 6 months.
yes,
And they will also run the heritage, because we have the view that the Expo should comprise what we call a globe,
yes, yes.
which is a new sort of 21st century
Yes,
Eiffel
yes.
Tower
Yes.
with
Ah.
data, with immersive experiences, where all the participant countries could cooperate in displaying
Yes, yes.
data, images, the sort of technology which we will have by 2025.
Uh-huh.
So this
Like
is
Star Wars type.
this is no cost
Yes.
for the taxpayer,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and the logistics and the infrastructures were decided 10 years ago when France decided to double the tube system around Paris.
Yes, yes.
So we today have 200 kilometers of underground.
Yes.
By 2030 we will have 400, and that was decided before we pitched for the Olympic Games and for the Expo. So these things will take place, and we are leveraging these extensions of the logistics that ease the participation,
Yes.
and that includes the new direct rail link between Roissy, which is
Okay.
the French big
Yes.
hub,
Yes.
and the center of Paris,
Yes.
which for the moment does not exist.
Yes.
So there is a synergy between this big urban planning and
Yes.
urban construction, including logistics, and 24 and 25. These things coincide in the time.
Wow, quite a impressive task. But let me ask you a very personal question. What motivates you to take on that such a global initiative? I know you're a globalist. It's sometimes you wonder after WTO what is there left to do and thing, right? So I'm pretty sure this something have to be more than the WTO thing. What's the passion behind it? What drive you to accept that that task?
That's a good question, and I'll be very frank. I took the decision. I accepted this job 3 years ago,
Yes,
at a time where France was not in good shape.
yes,
Things have changed
Yes.
with the election of the new president. There's a new dynamism, and public mood has become much more positive. But at the time, there was a lot of frustration.
Yes.
Politics were very complicated. The French economy was not doing as well as it should. And my idea for accepting it was trying to move the French people forward.
yes,
Instead of looking backward, let's look forward.
yes,
Let's look our potential. Let's invite the planet,
yes,
project ourselves as having ambitions. And the idea behind this was, to reconcile the French people with the world.
yes,
No, the French have always had a view of the world. Whether it sometimes may look a bit arrogant, but historically we've always thought we have to think where the world should go.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
This is a very high political ambition.
yes,
And I think there is a virtue in doing this. After all, globalization is what it is. But I've always thought, including in my previous lives as a DG of WTO or European Commissioner, that European countries, including France, should be in the lead for harnessing globalization.
yes, yes,
Globalization for many people is a great thing.
yes,
It has a huge impact in poverty reduction, but for other people, it's been tough. It's
Yes.
been hard. Trade opening, which is one of the aspects of globalization, is something that works. We know that, and Cambodia is a very good example of
Yeah.
that. But it works because it's painful, and it's painful because it works.
yes, yes,
And we have to be better at cashing
yes,
the benefits of globalization while addressing the pain, the difficulties,
Yes, yes.
these
The challenge.
reshuffling of economic and social systems, which is also one of the reasons why I have invested quite a lot in in driving tourism. I'm the chair of the World Ethics of Tourism Committee.
Yes.
With the UNWTO, the other WTO.
The other WTO.
So I've been living with two WTOs.
With two WTO.
And it's because I think tourism is a very good example of how great globalization can be.
Cambodia is a case.
Absolutely. Increasing your market volume by 4 or 5% per year during 30 years. There are not many businesses where this can be granted.
Yes.
But on the other side, we know also full well that sometimes tourism can harm the environment, can destroy landscapes, can damage coastal areas, can be unnice to local communities. So we have to take precautions. We have to
balancing
have policy. Exactly.
Balancing.
Yeah.
Balancing.
And this the Emmanuel Macron, the new French president, wrote a foreword for our Expo bid. And in this foreword, he wrote, we believe, we the French, that we should be better at harnessing globalization. We hope others will join us in doing this, and this is what the 2025 Universal Expo is about. And of course, one of the main challenges of globalization, we know now that, is environment.
Yes, exactly.
We did not know that in the 19th century, when exhibitions were invented.
Yes.
At the time, it was all about celebrating science, machine, technology.
But we don't get the consequence yet.
Exactly. What we've learned since is that science, progress, development can have a harmful impact on the hyper-exploitation of natural resources. So we have to try and keep this enthusiasm. You know, when Paris did its last Universal exhibition in 1900, we had 50 million visitors.
Unbelievable. In those days. In those days.
Absolutely. And that was a time, where people were so fond of looking at what had just been invented and projecting the future. So we have to keep this sort of optimism, dynamism, interest of the people for more knowledge, more science, more technology, more welfare. But knowing now that we have to cope with this environmental degradation problem. Otherwise,
it's not sustainable.
If we keep exhausting our resources, there is only one planet. And that's something which we need to catalyze, we need to dynamize. It's important to have international commitments. It's important to have a UN SDG framework so that we all work in the direction. But everything we can do to make it more concrete and quicker, I think we should do.
Wow, it's quite exciting, and I can see that you really take on that task with a passion. Somebody told me that if you do something that you love, it's passion. If you do something that you don't love, it's stress. You don't look stressed, Mr. Lamy. You don't look stressed. No, I'm glad to hear. Yeah, I'm glad to see that that passion, and I'm pretty sure that when you meet many other countries along your travel to convince them, they can feel that energy. They can feel that positiveness, this attitude. But the vote is when? It's next year, right?
The vote is taking place at the General Assembly of the Bureau International Exhibitions, which is the international organization that runs the organization, that organizes the competition, and the vote is taking place November next year. So we still
how optimistic you are?
I'm never optimistic or pessimistic. I'm activistic.
All right. Okay. So that's good. That's a good time to take another break, and when we come back, we can touch on a few other issues that you may like to share while you're in Cambodia. Slamy, you're gonna be here for next 2 days. You're very convincing to me, right? And I hope the audience will feel that energy. You plan to meet the government authority, and what will be your pitch to them?
Well, my pitch, like I did it in recent days in Vietnam or Laos, my pitch is Cambodia is a developing country. Developing countries have a problem in that they are less developed, but they have a big opportunity in that they can develop with a more sustainable economic, social, and environmental model. And that's a great thing for 20, 30 years from now, because we old industrialized countries have big problems in adjusting our economic system to more sustainabilities. We know that emerging countries like China, for instance, also have this problem. They have to fix quite a lot of damage which their economic growth has provoked on the environment. So countries like Cambodia, in a way, which is sort of third generation of development, can already integrate this, so save many problems for the future.
Skip the learning curve.
Exactly. Leapfrog, in a way.
Leapfrog is in a way.
Into something which is more easily sustainable. And this is what the Universal Expo will intends to help countries like Cambodia doing. So my pitch will, of course, it will be about the interest of Universal Expos and the fact that we've got lots of things to do together. But my pitch will also be, it's good for Cambodia. If Cambodia participates in a Universal Expo, which is organized by Paris, you will have to pay less. Pavilions will be less costly than in the past, because we have a model which is much more replicable, modular, and which again you can transform into something which is helpful for Cambodia in the future, like student residence. So you will, in a way, you will pay less, and you will get more visitors. The Cambodian pavilion in Milan had roughly 2 million visitors during 6 months. Milan had a bit more than 20 million on the whole. If we have the Expo in 2025, Cambodia will not have 2 million, but 4 million.
That's a lot of exposure.
Double of exposure for a lower price, which I think is a good quality ratio. So there is a lot of good feelings, but there's also something which has to do
tangible,
with tangible results and how much you invest for how much visibility you get. And, Cambodia is not a country which is short in visibility.
You
already have gained quite a lot of international visibility, notably in the sector of tourism, not only. So I'll make the case that I think it's a good deal for Cambodia.
Well, another thing, if I may contribute a bit to your pitch, is that we are now developing our own STEM policy, science, technology, and Cambodia, we're about to take off. We're embracing that. We have a young generation who are into fintech, who are into software engineer. The last couple of years has been very much a bubbling effect. You see, so this is something. This is something that the young Cambodian will appreciate. It's the opportunity for them to go and to get exposed, to connect, to see, and come back with ideas to develop.
I'm aware of this because before coming to Cambodia, I reviewed what France and Cambodia are doing together. Sort of cooperation themes we have, and it happened that science, technology, academic cooperation is increasing quite rapidly. And one of the reasons why we've chosen this Paris-Saclay place to organize the Expo is that it is a huge scientific cluster already. Most of our engineering schools, Polytechnique, École Nationale Supérieure, Supélec, Centrale, the agro teaching is now regrouping in this place. We have, 60,000 students today. We probably will have 80,000 in 2025. So it's science, youth, future, and environment. Those are
interconnected. And the way I see it's very interconnected. And interconnected. Well, Michel Ami, I think while you're here, I want to take a bit get your wisdom a bit to share, a bit about the world. The ministerial just finished, not so much success. What is your prospect? You told me you about to publish another book, which you have to autograph for me. But tell me the challenge in your new book. What is all about? What do you expect to cover that? What's the lesson, the message for the world?
No, I mean, if I look at the world today compared to what it was 10 or 20 years ago, I would say the economics are okay. The politics have a problem.
Okay.
I probably would have said something different in 2008 when the crisis started.
Yes.
I would have said, the economy has a problem and politics are reasonably okay.
Yes.
And this is a dangerous situation. I mean, at the end of the day,
yes.
I'm still convinced, but that's my personal view,
yes.
that the economic benefits of globalization will help easing political tensions.
Yes.
But there are many people who believe otherwise. I mean, the lady with whom I wrote this
yes.
book, which is called "Where is the World Going?" which
okay.
is a bit of a modest
yes,
title,
that's a good title.
Who's probably the best French geopolitician. She thinks otherwise. She thinks at a time we economists thought that globalization would make the world a better place.
Yes.
We were wrong. Look at what's happening with North Korea, look
yes.
at what's happening with Syria, look at what's happening with Russia.
Yes.
These are negative developments which were not there 10 or 20 years ago. Now, this is a big debate, and I mean, my view is more optimistic than
yes.
her view, but at the end of the day, what I'm convinced about is that we need to better re-embed economics and politics.
Yes.
A world where economics go their way,
yes.
global, and politics go their way,
yes.
domestic, national,
yes.
isolationist. And we have an example with the new U.S. president.
Yes. Yes.
The U.S., which were the leaders of globalization
yes.
in many ways, are now moving backwards, retreating,
yes.
and America first, which is his slogan, is not about globalization. It's about deglobalization.
Yes.
If you put America first, it
yes.
means that you want less
yes.
imports,
yes.
more export, which is a typical mercantilist way of looking at things.
Yes.
You want to privilege your own producers,
yes.
which at the end of the day will not work for growth, in my view,
yes.
because if you do something better than I do it, and I do something better than you do it,
yeah.
we have an interest in
Mr. Yami, this decoupling of the geopolitics and the geoeconomics, this decoupling, has it been simmering or just spontaneous like that?
I think it stems from partly from the vision of some leaders,
yes,
but also partly from the fact that globalization has been too tough for some people. If you take the example of the US, for
yes,
instance,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
the sort of populistic move which led
yes.
to the election of Donald Trump is also based on a socio-economic problem.
Yes.
And in my view, it's no coincidence. US among developed countries,
yes.
is the place where social safety nets are the weakest, are the thinnest.
Yes.
And I'm of the view that while globalization is good because it creates efficiencies, you need to be able to cope with the people who are left aside.
Yes.
If there's a feeling in the population
yeah.
that globalization is good for them,
yes,
but not for me, and them being the rich,
yes.
the foreigners,
yes,
I will turn more inward looking.
Inward, yes.
I will fear.
Yes.
I'll have an anxiety that my children will be worse off than I am.
Yes.
And then we all know. I mean, human nature is such that
yes.
people who are afraid
yes.
coalesce in proximity.
Yes.
And that's something which is dangerous. And without looking too much into philosophy, there was a guy who wrote about the origins of the Second World War, who was Polanyi,
Yes.
and he diagnosed the origins of the Second World War in saying economics and politics had gone in different directions. So we have to try and do that. This is
Recoupling again.
Absolutely. This is
Recoupling.
something which depends on domestic policies.
Yes.
It also depends on the international system. We also have to be better
Yes.
together
Yes.
at addressing collectively a number of issues, which otherwise people will feel they are powerless.
Yes.
If we keep environment degrading,
Yes.
people will react.
Yes.
They will feel there's nothing to do.
Yes.
And when you feel there's nothing to do, you start despairing.
Yes.
And despairing leads to
Yes.
extreme reactions. So it's
Terrorism is a good case.
absolutely, and we have to be very careful about that. And that means probably caring more than we've done in the
Yes.
past
Yes.
about the negative side of globalization, while recognizing it
Yes.
has huge benefits. We have to be careful not to believe that
Yes.
just reducing poverty is enough.
Yes.
We have to keep reducing poverty, but we have to be able to cope with these increasing inequalities. And you know, if there's at some stage a trade-off between economic welfare
Yes.
and identity, this is dangerous.
Yes.
Look at what happened with the Brexit.
Yes.
What did the British people vote? They voted knowing that Brexit would be costly,
Yes.
but thinking that they would regain control,
Yes.
identity, power.
Yes.
I personally believe it's a wrong trade-off.
Yes.
They probably, at the end of the day, will have the cost
Yes.
without really being
Yes.
in control, because economics are now so integrated that, I mean, what in a way what protects us from deglobalization
Yes.
is the advanced stage of globalization
Yes.
we're in.
Yes.
In the case of Brexit, it's obvious, you know, removing the UK egg
Yeah.
from the EU omelette is something
Yeah.
which is going to be very difficult because it's so tightly
It's so
integrated.
tightly.
So, but it's a good example
Yes.
of something which, at the end of the day, won't be good
Yes.
for them
Yes.
or for us Europeans, because if it's not good for the United Kingdom, it cannot be good for the continent. So these are things. I mean, look at the way Trump has been driving the U.S. economy for the moment.
Yes.
He's moving protectionist,
Yes.
which I think would be bad for us all. And he has to put his tax policy on steroids in
Yeah.
order to make sure that there is more growth in the US.
Yes.
Short term, this may work. Long term, this will be a problem.
Yes.
So there are reasons to be worried.
Yes.
And I think those of us who share this view
Yes.
that globalization is a good thing on the condition that it is properly harnessed
Yes.
should work more together.
One last for purely nostalgia purpose. Where do you see Doha round? Briefly.
Well, the Doha round has not concluded,
Yes.
and that's a reality which we have to recognize. Although there have been some progress here and there. There was a very good agreement in trade facilitation,
Yes.
for instance,
Bali.
which for many small businesses is a very important thing in order to benefit from more international open trade, and that was done in Bali a few years ago, where there still is a lack of progress. Is on agriculture,
Yeah.
where I still believe that support for agriculture, not only by EU and US, but now by countries like China and India, is something that distorts
Yeah.
the agriculture of countries who do not have the capacity to fight
Yes.
with the Chinese or the US or the European or the Indian treasury. And this is still a problem, although for the moment,
Yeah.
not that a big problem, because international food prices are
Yeah.
reasonably high.
Yes.
And when prices are high, subsidies are low.
Yes.
When prices are low, subsidies are high. And we have to prepare for this next cycle. So I would put this as a priority, assuming WTO remains in place
Yes.
as the multilateral discipline for trade, which obviously Donald Trump has a problem with. And this notion by the US that WTO has been bad for the US
Yes.
is wrong.
Yeah.
And if this leads into a damage,
Yeah.
we have to be very careful, and we will have, the others
Yes.
will have to react in due time.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Lamy, I think we have. For me, I really enjoyed this last 45 minutes, and
pleasure.
I really wish you all the best. I wish France all the best. And again, it's a pleasure to see you in Cambodia.
Pleasure for me.
Once again,
Pleasure
sir.
for me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Good. Okay. So I think we're coming to the end of the program, and it's so hard to summarize. So I'm not gonna bother with summarizing. But I hope you have an opportunity to digest a bit, particularly for the young, particularly for the Cambodian young IT, the fintech. This is your opportunity. Support that, because when the time comes, that's where you're gonna go to learn, to grab, to expose, to get all this idea and come back. Use all this knowledge, this innovation to help your country. So on that note, good learning and keep up this momentum. Good night.